I guess speaking more about recovery in the next stage of your life, like whenever that ends, or whatever, when did you feel like for me, I remember there was a distinct moment that I was like, I can't do this anymore. And I was, I say ready. I still, of course, wasn't. And I was like, no, no. But like, there was a part of my brain going, right, enough now, Jem, come on. Like, when do you feel like that began for you? And how do you feel like the road to the beginnings of recovery started?
Oh, that's a really big question. It's really difficult to answer. I think that there have been sort of like, maybe your moment of like, this is enough. I think I've had those moments, and sort of moments which feel like light bulb moments or revelation moments, but there hasn't been just one. There have been quite a lot. And I think that it's like we think of recovery sometimes as sort of like A to B, or just like flipping a switch. I think maybe the switch sort of does flip sometimes, or the light turns on, but then it goes off again, or then you have to sort of connect with that and think, okay, what did I feel like in that moment where I was really motivated, or when I really felt like, yes, I have to do this, even if I don't believe I can do it. And like, ambivalence is such a big part of it. And I think if you've tried in the past and not been successful, like not being able to make the progress that you want, or you've not had the support that you needed, because I think, usually it's people don't recover because they don't have the support they need. It's not anything to do with their own sort of weakness or anything at all like that. I think it's because they don't have the support they need. But it does sort of like go up and down, the motivation or the confidence. And why would you try and do something if you didn't think you were confident at having any chance of succeeding? You wouldn't.
Yeah.
It's just natural. So I think I had quite a lot of those moments of thinking this is enough. And I had one when I was a teenager, when I was in hospital, and just thought, like, it was quite a scary moment because they were saying like, this is very critical, and if we don't, we might be able to sort of maintain you, but we don't know for how long, basically. And I was sort of like, okay, I've pushed it this far, and nobody's really going to step in. No one's going to come and save me. No one's going to swoop in with a magic wand and pick me up and give me a hug. And it's just me. But that's kind of not what I believe, because I do think we really need other people, and it's not just about personal strength and your own determination. It is about the support that you have, but it is also about sort of that moment for you where you realize, like, I've got to be willing. I suppose it's difficult because I think you need both. But I had that really scary moment where I thought, okay, nobody's going to do it for me. I still need people to do it with me, but nobody's going to do it for me. And I sort of realized I had to start eating and drinking, because I wasn't even drinking by that stage. And that was probably the first time that happened. And for like 3 days, I was like, yeah, I can't wait. I'm going to be recovered. Everything's going to be amazing. This will all be over in a few weeks' time and I'll be fine. I just need to gain the weight and I'll be fine. But then it went, and then it came back, and then it went, and then I did gain weight, and I realized that I felt worse. And I was like, but everybody said that when you gain weight, you're going to feel better, your brain's going to miraculously sort of heal itself, and all of those thoughts that you had are going to go away, because that's the anorexic brain. And I felt like I'd been lied to, because I felt worse. And I think when I was really underweight, I didn't have to feel anything, because my body was closing down. I didn't have to feel all these difficult emotions. Like, emotions are feelings because we feel them. Like, and if you close down your body, you don't feel them. And I'm not saying that's a good thing, but I couldn't feel my feelings because they were too overwhelming. And so when I gained weight and they all came back, I just felt much worse. And I was like, well, now I don't have any way of coping with those things. And nobody gave me the tools to cope with them when I gained the weight, because they thought I was better. And I suppose it's just like, if you think that's recovery, or if clinicians think that's recovery, then we're setting people up to fail by just sort of taking away their way of coping and their way of feeling safe, and not giving any other kinds of tools. And I think, like, in this journey of ups and downs of, like, you know, I want to recover now I don't, like, a lot later on I had dialectical behavior therapy, which is kind of like a ramped up version of CBT.
Right.
Um, so it's a really intensive therapy, and they use it sometimes for eating disorders, but it's all about sort of recognizing that your behavior, like the eating behaviors, they serve like a real function. Like, they're not ideal and they're really not healthy, but they are there for a reason. And for me, it was to do with coping with these difficult emotions. And I think by the time I got, you know, when I was offered DBT, I was really relieved, because I was like, finally, somebody understands that I have these eating problems for a reason, and that just eating isn't going to fix the emotional problems. And what DBT does is it sort of tries to give you a whole range of skills to use instead of the eating disorder. And I think that eating disorders can be so powerful and so effective and so automatic and well rehearsed, to sort of give you that relief that you need, or to give you that break from the emotional pain, or whatever it is for different people. So if you're going to replace it, you're going to need something pretty effective. You're going to need like a lot of different skills. You're going to need a lot of help, as well. And so I think that, yeah, in terms of those moments, there was the moment of, okay, I need to eat, and then there was a moment later on where I was like, okay, it's more than that, and I have to think about the bigger picture. And my confidence has gone up and down, and I think some of that sort of difficult experiences of asking for help and not getting it, I think that really knocked me, and I think that knocks a lot of people, when you really need to be listened to in those moments. But I think that over time, I managed to sort of find something that worked for me as a foundation, and then you have to make it your own, as we were saying earlier.
Sorry, I'm getting emotional. Like,
No, it made
but
me
you
remembering. I was,
articulate things so well, though, James, and I just think I'm emotional because what you're saying is some of the things I've never really thought about before, and it's emotional because I think it will help so many people, and it's emotional because it resonates and it helps me. I feel like so many people don't hear this message,
yeah.
that they feel a failure. They're already feeling a failure, and then when they go to start their recovery or whatever it is, then they feel a failure because it doesn't work like that. And that's not you and I being like pessimistic or negative. Like, it's just because there will be people going through it, and I think what we need to make sure that we do is explain that it's going to be a bumpy road, but it doesn't mean that it's not going to be a great one in the end, but like, it's not going to be easy. And then, like, newsflash, life ain't easy anyway.
Yeah.
It's just, I just think you articulate it so well. And like, I was going to say, like, what would you ask, so what would you say to your younger self now? But I guess you touched on a lot of things, but if you could, like, regardless of advice about the eating disorder, but what would you say to your younger self now about James?
Oh, so many things, I think. And there were so many things that I
Go
really
for it.
wanted to hear that I didn't hear.
Yeah.
And I think there's this thing of, one of them would be that you're not weak, because I think that I felt like I must have been really weak somehow to have these problems. And I think actually, when I look back on it now, I think, well, if you can live with an eating disorder, you are not weak at all. I mean, you are so strong. And I think now, from where I'm at now, that experience, I would never wish it on anybody at all, but it has given me so much strength to deal with other things. And things come along like lockdown. I'm like, spent years locked down when I was younger. I'm ready for this. Like, I can cope with this. I've got all the tools I need. I can cope with that. Compared to eating disorder, it's walk in the park. I mean, it's really hard. It is really, really hard.
No, I
But
know, but I'm exactly the
I think
same.
that I'm like, well, no, that was not a sign, an experience of weakness. That was a sign of strength. And the fact that, I kept going and kept going, even when I didn't know what it was. And I still managed to sort of keep going. And I think that, I don't know, we so easily think that mental health problems are to do with weakness, and I really don't think that they are. And I think that there's a huge strength in recognizing them, in trying to get help. I think another thing I would say about eating disorder, I guess, but is, like, if you don't get the help that you need, it's really not your fault.
Yeah.
It's the system. And I think that, like, there is an expectation, I think, when you have a health problem, whatever it is, that, somebody should help you. And I think we should be helping people more than we are. And that's not saying it's all doom and gloom, because some people do get really good help and they get it when they need it.
Yeah.
But I think that I would say to my younger self, like, you know, if you feel disappointed or you don't get the help that you need, don't take that personally, because although it feels really painful and really, really unfair, actually, really unjust, I think, it's not a reflection of what you're worth, and you don't have to take that as a sign of how much you're worth in the world. But when that keeps being told to you over and over again in lots of different
Yeah.
areas, then of course you can't help but believe it, even if you know that it's not true. So I think I would be constantly reminding my younger self that it's not because you're worth less. It's just because the system doesn't work in the way that it should.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to things like recovery and treatment, I would say, like, okay, like, listen to what they've got to offer, and there's loads of great stuff out there, but your own knowledge of yourself is as important as what anybody can tell you. And if for you, going and doing some dance or some yoga is part of your recovery, then make that part of your recovery.
Mhm.
And I think that, like, I have had some really good treatment, and I'm so grateful for it. And it changed my life, and it gave me a foundation to build my life. But it didn't build my life for me. And the stuff that I sort of, I don't know, that the things that I value in my recovery, most of them are not from that treatment. It's other things. It is things like yoga. It's my social recovery. We don't think about that. Like, I had no friends. I had to leave school. I am in touch with one person from high school.
Yeah.
And that was like a whole new world that I had to start all over from scratch, that I didn't really have much help with. But that was as important to my recovery, and having, what is it to have healthy friendships where I'm not just giving all the time? Can I feed myself in loads of different ways in life? And I think it's not just about, can I eat this meal, and can I keep it down, or whatever? Can I nourish myself? It's, are you nourishing yourself in the things that you do to enjoy? Or is it just working all the time? Or are you nourishing yourself in your relationships? Or are you just giving out all the time? And I think I would remind my younger self, like, you do need, like, life is there to be enjoyed, not just to be like a constant sort of feeling of punishment, which is what I was used to with eating disorder, or just serving other people. Though there's a great pleasure in, like, doing things that help other people as well. But it's about what are you enjoying? And there's that, we were talking about relationships earlier, and, like, there's this thing of, sometimes I would always think, well, will they like me? But I never thought, will I like them? And that's what life should be like. It should be like, well, what about, do I actually like this job? Do I actually like this activity?
Yeah.
What do I really like? And making your recovery, like, for me and my recovery now, which is ongoing, like, making sure that I do meditation is, like, as important as my regular eating.
Yeah.
Like, because I found out from my experience that really works for me.
Yeah.
And so, like, it's kind of, don't let anybody else tell you what the whole picture is for you,
Yeah.
because that's your picture to create. And yeah, things that are offered, like, in clinical settings, can be really helpful. It can be really appropriate. It's not everything.
Mm.
That's so that you can have a full life.
Yeah.
So I think keeping your eye on the bigger picture, but sometimes it's so easy to forget that and not even see anything. You think of the future and you just can't see anything. And
Yeah.
I've been there too. But even if you feel like that's impossible, just remembering somewhere that it could be different, that's kept me going, I think, during like the worst times.
Oh, that's amazing. And gosh, is there any advice you could give on the other side? I know that a lot of what we do at Seed is not just about the person who's suffering, it's about the carer, the friend, the parent, the sibling. A lot of people come to us who need support, and you'll know this as well with your, going into schools. A lot of the kids actually are ask questions as a friend of someone who's suffering. Like, is there any? It's so hard. I know this question is so hard, but I know what one fundamental is, and I've touched on it already. But I just wonder from if there was any carers or friends out there watching this, if there was any advice you could give to them.
Yeah, I think it's as important, isn't it? Because like we were talking about your own sort of light bulb moment and stuff, and your own motivation and everything. But I think you can't separate that from the support you have around you.
Yeah,
And I look back and look at the support my family had. They had nothing, and I think that was a massive like oversight, because that was where I was living and where I was gonna try and get better, was at home. And if the people around you don't understand, then I really don't think, sorry, my phone's just ringing. Can I
yeah.
just,
We can edit it out.
are you able to cut it?
Yeah,
Okay, cool. It just sort of like came up on the screen. So I think that like my family had nothing when I was younger, no support, no, I think they saw a psychiatrist once for one appointment in the whole time that I was in treatment when I was under 18. And they just didn't know what to do to help. And it's not that there aren't things,
no,
that
no,
there is information and things that would help. It's just that they weren't given that support. And I think that people just assumed that they would know what to do because they're sort of middle class or they're sort of well-to-do kind of people, and so I would naturally have support.
mm,
But I think you can't assume that. And my family have had their own mental health problems, so they might find it, especially difficult. And so I think that if somebody was, a carer or a friend of somebody with an eating problem, I think that you can have a role to play in supporting somebody with an eating disorder. It's just sometimes it can feel really powerless,
mm,
especially if you don't have that information. And it is good to go and look for resources and, learn a bit about eating disorders and what they're like. But I think that's never as good as asking the person themselves,
yeah,
because you can read as much as you like in a book about bulimia, for example, and then you speak to somebody individually and you're like, oh, well, that's not what it said in the book. And
mm,
they only have like two of the five things in the book, or they have them in a different kind of way, or there's more of this and less of that. And so I suppose that, whilst I think you need to have an idea about eating disorders, like a little bit of an idea, and that's really positive, I think the main thing that we can do is listen. And I really think that I could have benefited from somebody to listen to me. And what I found was that people wanted to do things to me rather than to do things with me,
yeah,
or just to not do anything at all and just to listen. Because I think that people are often really frightened of talking about eating disorders or supporting somebody with an eating disorder because they think they need to be a specialist, or they think that, they're going to be met with a lot of confrontation. And I think, I look back and yeah, I was really frightened of people challenging my eating disorder or taking it off me,
yeah,
because it was my way of being safe and it was my lifeline. So that's really understandable. But it doesn't mean I didn't want people to listen.
yeah, yeah,
And if I did have people listening, then maybe over time I would have trusted them and they could have helped me more actively. But I think that supporting someone with an eating disorder isn't necessarily about like fixing them and making them better and making them behave differently or making them eat.
yeah,
I think sometimes, that has to happen at some point. But I think it's about the stuff behind that, like the stuff before that, that's about listening. And I think we rush to change people quite a lot when they're not ready. And before that, people really need to be heard. And I didn't want to be helped a lot of the time. I really wanted to be heard. And I think you need both, and so I would say showing that you care can sometimes make a big difference, even if you know that you can't really help. Like I've had friends say to me, oh, I really don't think I know very much about it. And I'm really sorry that I don't know very much about it, but I just want you to know that I care. Made such a massive difference to me, because I was like, because the feeling of being lonely and that nobody cares or nobody understands can be really difficult. And when my friend said that to me, I was just like, oh, that's all I needed, was to know that somebody really cared, even if they don't know what to do. And I was kind of like, well, I don't know what's going to help either. So like,
but I think that segues really nicely into my last question for you, really. What are your hopes for the future of eating disorder care? What would you, in an ideal world, how would you like to see things be different?
Lots of things. I think that it's not being like overly negative to say that things aren't ideal at the moment. There isn't enough capacity, and actually we don't really know sort of what works for which different kinds of people with different kinds of disorders. We have a general idea, when you look at the research, and actually there isn't that much research compared to other conditions. So I think that's one thing I'd like to see change.
Yeah.
And the sort of effectiveness of treatment isn't great when compared to other conditions as well. So I think all of those things need to change. But I think that we can just do so much better, and it's with the knowledge that we have, that it's not about waiting for the research, about waiting for some kind of like new drug to happen or some kind of new kind of therapy or anything. Like that stuff will help in the picture, but I think currently we could do so much more with what we have, like with the knowledge that we have, and that a lot of it comes down to funding. I think that we need a lot more funding for services so that we can just see enough people, because we know that there are just many people for the amount of money and the amount of staff. I think lots more training for people around eating disorders and awareness, and like a kind of awareness that doesn't say everyone with anorexia is like this, but says, we can listen to people and their individual experiences. I suppose a big thing that I would love to see is just it being more normal to talk about, and to remove that shame or fear of talking about it, because we don't want to open up a can of worms, or we don't want to sort of, I don't know, feel powerless to help. And I think that it should be something normal to talk about our relationship with food and our relationship with our bodies, whether it's good, whether it's bad. And people think that eating disorders are these things that happen to other people, or they're kind of niche. Well, they're not. It's like we all have mental health, whether it's good one day, bad another day, or not very good for a long time, and that's a diagnosis. Like we all can relate to eating disorders. And I don't think people think that. They think it's something that's niche, because we all have a relationship with food and eating and body image and exercise. And like we just need to get much more confident about talking about that and recognizing that that relationship can change, and that it's normal for it to sort of go up and down in everybody, and that in some people it'll be a real problem. But if we don't have spaces for those conversations, then it all goes underground, or people hold on to it for so long that they only have that space to talk about it when it's unavoidable and it's just such a big problem. And so I think that a lot of that is around just the way that rest of society talks about eating, bodies and body image and all of these things. So I think that there's a place for that in schools, there's a place for that in social media, and that a lot of that could actually prevent people from having eating problems in the first place. And always, I suppose my last thing would be to always remember, whether it's in services or in charities, or supporting a friend, always remembering that people are individual, and that no one size fits all for eating disorders, and they can affect anybody from any different kind of background, and that listening to people is the starting point, I think, and that you don't know the impact that you could have on somebody by asking them, rather than being scared of asking them, but asking them knowing that you can listen, knowing that you don't have to be an expert. Because actually the relief when I first could talk to somebody without being scared that they were going to fix me and change me and take everything away from me, or without feeling that I couldn't trust them, that was probably one of the main turning points in my recovery. And I think that we can do that for other people, whether we have our experiences of eating disorders of our own or not. So I think that's a big thing that we can all offer. We don't need to be specialists to do that.
James, what you've done today will definitely go towards contributing to that. So thank you. You've been absolutely amazing. I know that I will take a lot away from this last hour or so that we've had. thankful, grateful, and you've inspired me. So yeah, thank you so much. Is there anything that you're doing at the moment that we should be watching out for? Anything? I know there's not a lot in terms of like lockdown, but I know that you do your talks and you do your yoga and dancing online, so we can signpost people to your socials. But is there anything that you as you are just excited about this year?
Yeah, I've got loads of like work things on and stuff, and I do work in the eating disorders area, like with NHS England and the
Amazing.
Royal Psychiatrists and stuff. And that's like, I don't say I necessarily look forward to that, but there's a lot of that work going on because we know it's a big area at the moment, and more people coming forward. So that's one thing that's going to keep me busy, let's
Yeah,
say.
yeah,
And then I have like my yoga teaching and stuff. I just guess I'm looking forward to doing other things that aren't just work.
yeah.
Um, and like at the moment, I think I've been working a lot recently, and some of my friends are like, "Oh, well, how's your work-life balance?" I'm like, "Well, what life? Like, what is that? What else is there to do? Like, I'm just working all the time, and I have to like force myself to stop, and be like, I know it's the same walk that you're going on or the same whatever it is, but I'm forcing myself to stop. But I think just being able to have a bit more variety in those things, even
Yeah.
if it's just really slowly. And I think that my experience of like living with eating disorder for so long was helped me, I suppose, to really appreciate little things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I didn't appreciate maybe when I was younger. And I think now I take so much joy in just being in my body, which is something that I hated in the past, or just noticing really little things like small little movements in yoga or something, or going outside and feeling the sun or the wind. And it sounds really, really cheesy.
No,
I
not at all.
think that like, when you get to the point of maybe you just, don't want to carry on anymore, and then you sort of come out of that, I think all the colors are somehow a little bit brighter. And so I appreciate all these little things. So for me, just being able to go and sit in a cafe or something, like I will appreciate that so much. And I think
Mm.
we'll all appreciate these things more because we haven't had them. And it's the same with eating disorders. When you haven't had it, then
Yeah,
you appreciate it. You appreciate all these things more. So there's loads to look forward to. I'm really lucky, in a really lucky position that I'll be able to do some of those things, I hope.
yeah,
And trying to remain positive and optimistic for the future.
absolutely. Well, on that note, look who's just woken up. Ruby. Oh, are you
Oh,
still sleeping? Oh no, so Ruby's just woken up. So this is my work-life balance.
you were that boring. You sent him to sleep.
I know, no, it's not at all. She had a big day yesterday, bless her. But this is my work-life balance: work, and then take her out. But honestly, James, like I mean that. I'm not just saying it. You are so strong, and you are not weak, and you are going to be and are already such an inspiration to so many people for being so selfless and sharing this with us, and I can't thank you enough. So keep being amazing, and we will keep in touch, no doubt, and I will be following you and cheerleading you all the way with everything that you do. But thank you.
And thanks for everything that you do, because it's so important to have people helping us have these conversations and providing that space and that hope. So
Thank
thank
you,
you.
darling.